She laughed in my face and said I could play family without her. Then she slammed the door so hard the windows rattled, leaving me with a choice I never thought I'd make. I stood frozen in the living room, the echo of Emily's words slicing through me like a blade. At 42, I thought I'd seen every shade of defiance from my daughter, but this was Nawa cold, calculated rejection of everything I'd tried to build. My second marriage to Laura had been a lifeline after years of single parenting, a chance to stitch together a new family with her son, Ethan. But Emily, my 17-year-old firebrand, saw it as a betrayal. She'd been distant since the wedding, her sarcasm sharpening with every passing month, but tonight's outburst was the breaking point. "You want your perfect little family with your new wife and her kid," she'd sneered. "Go ahead, Dad. Playhouse. I'm out." The door's slam was her punctuation, and it left a silence that roared louder than her words. I wasn't always this man standing in a house that felt like a battlefield, trying to hold together a family that seemed determined to tear itself apart. 5 years ago, I was just a widower doing my best to raise Emily alone after her mother's car accident. Back then we were a team. She'd climb into my lap, her small hands tugging at my beard, begging for stories about her mom. I'd tell her how Sarah's laugh could light up a room, how she'd sing off-key to old rock songs while cooking dinner. Those memories kept us tethered, but as Emily grew, so did the distance between us. Puberty hit, and with it came the eye rolls, the slammed doors, the "you don't get it, Dad" mantra. I thought it was just a phase until Laura and Ethan entered our lives. Laura was a gift I didn't expect. A nurse with a warm smile and a knack for making people feel seen, she pulled me out of the fog of grief. Ethan, her 16-year-old son, was quiet but kind, a kid who'd lost his own father to divorce and carried a quiet strength I admired. When we moved in together, I had visions of family dinners, board game nights, maybe even a vacation or two. But Emily saw it differently. To her, Laura wasn't a new beginning. She was a replacement. Ethan wasn't a brother. He was an intruder. And me? I was the traitor who dared to move on from her mother. The tension had been simmering for months, but the car was the spark that set it ablaze. Emily had turned 17 last month, and I'd saved for a year to buy her a used red Honda Civic, a reliable car to get her to school, her part-time job at the coffee shop, and maybe even a few road trips with friends. She'd been thrilled at first, her eyes wide as she ran her hands over the steering wheel, thanking me with a rare hug. But the gratitude didn't last. She started using the car as leverage, a tool to assert her independence. She'd disappear for hours without a word, ignore my texts, and roll her eyes when I asked where she'd been. "It's my car, Dad," she'd snap. "You gave it to me." Last week I caught her sneaking out at midnight, the Civic's engine rumbling in the driveway. When I confronted her, she didn't even flinch. "I'm not a kid anymore," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You can't control me." I grounded her, took the keys, and told her she'd get them back when she showed some respect. That's when she hit me with it. "You're not my dad anymore. You're just Laura's husband, Ethan's dad. Play family without me." The words stung, not just because they were cruel, but because they carried a truth I didn't want to face. Emily felt like she was losing me, and I hadn't known how to stop it. The next morning I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the car keys. Laura was at work, her hospital shift stretching into the afternoon. Ethan was in the living room, his nose buried in a math textbook. He was a good kid, the kind who didn't ask for much. Unlike Emily, who demanded the world and then some, Ethan was content with what he had: a beat-up skateboard, a second-hand laptop, and a quiet determination to make something of himself. He'd been accepted into an advanced science program at school, one that required a long commute. He hadn't complained about taking the bus, but I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he dragged himself home after late study sessions. An idea took root, one born of anger and maybe a little spite. Emily didn't want the car? Fine. Someone else did. I called Ethan into the kitchen and tossed him the keys. His eyes widened, confusion giving way to a tentative smile. "For real?" he asked, his voice soft but hopeful. I nodded, my chest tight with a mix of pride and defiance. "You've earned it," I told him. "Take it to school. Make it yours." By the time Emily got home from her shift, the Civic was parked in the driveway with Ethan's skateboard tossed in the back seat. She froze, her backpack slipping from her shoulder. "What the hell, Dad?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, trying to keep my face steady. "You said you didn't need me or this family," I said. "You don't want the car?" "Ethan does. He's got school, his program. He'll use it well." Her face turned red, her eyes flashing with a fury I'd never seen. "You gave my car to him?" she shouted, pointing at Ethan, who stood awkwardly by the door. "You're choosing your stepson over your own daughter?" Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the hurt beneath the anger, the little girl who used to cling to me, now feeling like she'd been cast aside. But I was too angry to back down. "You chose to walk away, Emily," I said. "This is what that looks like." The argument exploded from there. Emily's voice rose, each word a dagger aimed at me. "Laura, Ethan, the whole idea of our blended family. You're pathetic," she spat. "You think you can just replace Mom with Laura, replace me with Ethan? You're not a daddy-a coward." Ethan tried to step in, his voice calm but firm. It's not like that. I didn't ask for this." But she turned on him, her words venomous. "Shut up, Ethan. You're not my brother. You're just some kid my dad picked up to feel good about himself." Laura came home in the middle of it, her face paling as she took in the scene. She tried to mediate, her voice the soft anchor she always brought to chaos. "Emily, let's talk this out," she said, reaching for her. But Emily jerked away. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "You're not my mom." The words landed like a slap, and Laura's hand froze in midair. I saw the pain in her eyes, the way she swallowed it down to keep the peace. But Emily wasn't done. She stormed to the driveway, yanked open the Civic's door, and started pulling Ethan's things out, his skateboard, his backpack, tossing them onto the pavement. "Emily, stop it!" I shouted, stepping forward. She whirled on me, tears streaming down her face now. "You want me gone? Fine. I'll go. But you don't get to pretend this is okay." She grabbed her own bag and started walking down the street, her silhouette shrinking under the streetlights. I wanted to run after her to pull her back, but my feet wouldn't move. Ethan stood beside me, his jaw tight, the keys still clutched in his hand. Laura touched my arm, her voice quiet. "She'll come back, Tom. She's just angry." But I wasn't so sure. Emily's words had dug deep, unearthing doubts I'd buried long ago. Was I failing her? Had I been too quick to move on, to build a new family without mending the cracks in the old one? The car, that damn car, had become a symbol of everything broken between us. Giving it to Ethan wasn't just about rewarding him, it was my way of proving a point, of showing Emily that actions had consequences. But as I watched her disappear into the night, I wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The next few days were a haze of silence and tension. Emily stayed at her friend Kayla's house, ignoring my calls and texts. Laura tried to keep things normal, cooking dinners and asking Ethan about his science program. But the air felt heavy, like we were all holding our breath. Ethan drove the Civic to school, his gratitude tempered by guilt. "I don't want to cause trouble, Tom," he said one morning, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Maybe you should give it back to her." I shook my head, stubbornness winning out. "This isn't about the car anymore," I said. "She needs to learn." But what was she learning? That her father would choose someone else over her? That her place in our family was negotiable? The thought gnawed at me, keeping me up at night as I stared at the ceiling, Laura sleeping soundly beside me. I'd wanted to teach Emily a lesson, but now I wasn't sure who was being taught. A week later, I got a call from Kayla's mom. Emily had been staying with them, but she'd been reckless, skipping school, sneaking out, even getting caught with a fake ID at a bar downtown. "She's hurting, Tom," Kayla's mom said, her voice gentle but firm. "You need to talk to her before this gets worse." My stomach twisted. I'd been so focused on standing my ground that I hadn't seen how far Emily was slipping. I drove to Kayla's house that night, the Civic's empty passenger seat a stark reminder of what I'd done. Emily was sitting on the front steps when I pulled up, her knees drawn to her chest. She looked smaller, younger, like the girl who used to beg for bedtime stories. I sat beside her, the silence stretching between us. "I messed up," I said finally, my voice thick. "I thought I was teaching you something, but I just pushed you away." She didn't look at me, but her shoulders softened. "You gave my car to Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You chose him." I shook my head, my chest aching. "I didn't choose him over you. I was angry, Em. You said you didn't want this family, and I wanted you to see what that felt like. But I was wrong." She turned to me then, her eyes red but fierce. "You don't get it, Dad. It's not about the car. It's about Mom. Every time you're with Laura, with Ethan, it's like you're forgetting her. Like you're forgetting me." Her words hit like a punch, and for the first time I saw the depth of her pain, not just anger, but grief, raw and unhealed. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I could never forget your mom," I said. "Or you. Laura and Ethan aren't replacements, they're a part of our life now. But you're my daughter, Em. Always." She didn't say anything, but she leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Sitting on those steps with Emily, her head on my shoulder, I felt the weight of every choice I'd made. The night air was cool, but her warmth grounded me, reminding me of the little girl who used to trust me with everything. I'd been so caught up in proving a point, teaching her a lesson about respect, about consequences, that I'd lost sight of what she needed most, to know she was still my world. Her words about her mother, about feeling replaced, echoed in my head. I'd thought moving forward with Laura and Ethan was healing, but for Emily it was a wound that never closed. "I miss her too, Em," I said, my voice low. "Every day. Laura doesn't change that. Ethan doesn't change that. You're my link to her, you know? You've got her fire, her stubbornness." I managed a small laugh, hoping to lighten the moment. Emily didn't smile, but she squeezed my hand, just enough to tell me she was listening. The next morning I drove her back home. The Civic sat in the driveway, a silent reminder of the rift between us. Ethan was at school, and Laura was in the kitchen, her eyes soft with worry as we walked in. She didn't say anything, just poured Emily a mug of hot chocolate, her favorite since she was a kid. Emily took it without a word, but I saw the way her fingers lingered on the mug, like she was holding onto something familiar. We sat at the table, the three of us, and I knew we couldn't just gloss over what had happened. "We need to talk about the car," I said, looking at Emily. "And about us." She stiffened, her guard going up, but she didn't bolt. Laura nodded, her presence steady but unobtrusive. "Emily," I continued, "I was wrong to give the car to Ethan without talking to you. I was angry, and I wanted you to feel the weight of your words. But I hurt you instead." Emily stared at her mug, her jaw tight. "You didn't just give him the car, Dad. You gave him my place. Like I don't matter anymore." Her voice trembled, and Laura reached out, then stopped, remembering Emily's reaction last time. But Emily didn't flinch this time. She looked up, her eyes meeting Laura's. "I know you're trying," she said quietly, "but it's hard. You're not her." Laura nodded, her eyes glistening. "I don't want to be Emily. I just want to be here for you if you'll let me." It was the most honest thing I'd heard in weeks, and for the first time I saw Emily soften just a fraction. When Ethan got home, the air grew tense again. He walked in, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and froze when he saw Emily. The keys were in his pocket. I could see the outline, and Emily's eyes locked onto them. I'm sorry, Em, Ethan said before anyone else could speak. I didn't mean to take anything from you. I'll give the car back. He pulled the keys out and set them on the table, his face earnest but guarded. Emily stared at the keys, then at Ethan. I braced for another outburst, but instead she shook her head. It's not just the car, she said, her voice raw. It's everything. You're here and you fit, and I don't know where I fit anymore. Her admission hung in the air, vulnerable and heavy. Ethan looked at her, his usual quiet confidence replaced by something softer. You're his daughter, he said. You'll always fit here. I'm just extra. It was a small moment, but it shifted something. Emily didn't respond, but she didn't lash out either. I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes, like she was seeing Ethan not as a rival, but as someone trying to navigate this messy family just like her. Over the next few weeks we tried to rebuild. The car stayed in the driveway and used, as we worked out a new arrangement. Emily and Ethan agreed to share it, with a schedule that gave her priority but ensured Ethan could get to his science program. It wasn't perfect, there were still arguments, moments when Emily's temper flared or Ethan retreated into silence, but it was progress. Laura and I made a point to carve out time for Emily alone, whether it was a movie night or a drive to her favorite ice cream shop. I started talking about her mom more, sharing stories I'd kept locked away, afraid they'd hurt too much. Emily listened, sometimes adding her own memories, and I saw the grief in her eyes start to soften, not disappear, but become something she could carry. But the real test came a month later. Emily had been doing better going to school, texting me her plans, even joking with Laura at dinner. Then one night, she came home late, her eyes red and her breath sharp with the faint smell of alcohol. My heart sank. I'd thought we were past this, but the fake ID incident at Kayla's was still fresh in my mind. Where were you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged, tossing her jacket on the couch. Out. With friends. Her tone was defiant, but there was a waver in it, like she was testing me. Laura was in the kitchen, watching but not interfering. Ethan was upstairs, probably hearing every word. I took a deep breath, remembering the steps the night she'd let me in. Em, talk to me, I said. What's going on? She glared at me, but the fight drained out of her. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. I saw Mom's old friend at the mall today, she said, her voice muffled. She said I looked just like her. And I didn't know how to handle it. My chest tightened. I sat beside her, close but not touching. I miss her too, I said. But you don't have to carry that alone. She cried then, quiet sobs that shook her shoulders. I wrapped an arm around her and she didn't pull away. Laura brought her a glass of water, and Ethan came downstairs, hovering awkwardly until Emily looked up and gave him a small nod. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, but it was enough. We were learning to be a family, not a perfect one, but one that could bend without breaking. The car became a turning point, not because of who drove it, but because of what it forced us to face. Emily's rebellion, my stubbornness, Ethan's quiet resilience, Laura's patience, they all collided in that driveway, exposing the cracks in our family. But those cracks let the light in too. Emily started opening up, not just to me but to Laura, asking her about her nursing stories, even laughing at her terrible puns. Ethan and Emily found a rhythm, sharing the car and occasionally each other's company on drives to school. They weren't siblings, not yet, but they were something closer than strangers. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Emily looked at me, her expression unreadable. You didn't give up on me, she said, almost like she was surprised. I smiled, my throat tight. Never will, kid. Laura reached for my hand under the table, and Ethan grinned, a rare full smile that lit up his face. For the first time the house felt whole, not perfect but whole. The consequences of that night in the driveway lingered, though. Emily's words had cut deep, and my decision to give the car to Ethan wasn't just a lesson, it was a wound. She'd pushed me away and I'd pushed back harder than I meant to. But in the end, it forced us to confront the truth. Family isn't about who's right or wrong, but about who shows up, even when it's hard. Emily learned that her place in our home was unshakable, but she also learned that actions have ripple effects. My choice to give the car to Ethan wasn't justicide, it was anger dressed up as principle. The real justice came in the slow, messy work of rebuilding trust. As I look back, I wonder what you'd do in my place. Was I wrong to take the car from Emily, to try to teach her a lesson through loss? Or was she right to push back, to demand her place in a family that felt like it was moving on without her? Maybe justice isn't about who wins, but about who keeps fighting for connection. Share your thoughts. What would you have done? How do you balance love and consequences in a family that's breaking and healing at the same time?